PlayStation has just unveiled their new version of PlayStation Plus. This is something that has been rumored about for the past couple months as Project Spartacus, and what they've unveiled in a press release today really mirrors a lot of what those rumors were saying, and honestly, not a whole lot more. But because it is now officially a thing, the parts that are being kind of clarified and the parts that are still being left a little vague has me having a lot of questions and further thoughts. First off, let's just quickly summarize what exactly this has to offer if you haven't seen the press release yet. Basically, Sony is getting rid of PlayStation Now and instead combining it with PlayStation Plus as a single service that offers 3 different tiers: Essentials, Extra, and Premium. Now, the Essentials tier is effectively what PlayStation Plus is right now. It's being offered at the same price of $9.99 a month, $24.99 for 3 months, or $60 for a year, and it is the exact same benefits. Cloud storage for games, 2 free games a month, all that good stuff. It is effectively unchanged. So if you have PlayStation Plus going on right now, it's going to renew as that version of Essentials, and you're not going to see any real difference. Where you start to see new stuff added is PlayStation Plus Extra. Now this one goes for a decent price increase of $15 for a month, $40 for 3 months, or $100 for a full year. And the main benefit of this tier is the ability to download and play PS4 and PS5 titles that are made available as part of the catalog. Now obviously we don't know what this full list is right now, but as part of the press release, Sony does specify a few games that they're planning on having on it as soon as possible, especially some big name ones with games like Returnal, Spider-Man, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Mortal Kombat 11, and more. And the press release does throw out the number of being up to 400 games made available at a time. Now, how many of those are available right at the start, whether that's something they're growing towards over time, is not entirely clear, but the idea is that as many as 400 games are going to be available as part of the service at a time. Now, the highest tier of this service is PlayStation Plus Premium, and it's one of the benefits of this one that really does have me asking a lot more questions, because it ties into what has been a very long, lightly controversial topic on the PlayStation 5, backwards compatibility. See, on top of offering the PS4 and PS5 games that are part of the Extra subscription, the Premium subscription increases the price by a little bit more, not as big of a gap as between the Essentials and Extra version, but still punches up a little higher to $18 a month, $50 for 3 months, and $120 for a full year. And the bonuses that offers is access to PS1, PS2, and PSP digital classics that can be downloaded and played on the system, along with PS3 games that are going to be locked only to stream play, because as it turns out, emulating PS3 games is a really, really big headache. Now, the classic games are something that was being talked about in the rumors, and back then it wasn't clear whether or not those games were going to be stream play or downloadable, and it turns out they're downloadable, which is a great start, but their inclusion in this press release without a whole lot of extra clarification is really interesting to me. Again, when talking about the PS4 and PS5 games, they threw out right away the number of up to 400 titles, they specified some games right away, whereas with the classic games, it's kind of just a very quick line of saying, these classics are going to be available for download play. And so the 2 really big questions this leads me to have is, first off, how large is this catalog of classic titles as part of the service? Because again, they throw out that 400 figure for PS4 and PS5 and don't really say anything for the classics. And really, more importantly, secondly, whether or not these games are going to be made available outside of the service. If you've ever seen me talk about Nintendo Switch Online, you'll know something that I really argue about a lot and get kind of angry about is, look, I have nothing against subscription services as a way to gain access to games. I actually think it's a really cool option, and I love that it's there, but I love that it's an option, not necessarily the only way to do things. Classic games being made available digitally is a big deal to me. This is something that I talked about a lot back when PlayStation was potentially closing the PS3 and PS Vita store, because there are a lot of really good classic games that, honestly, you just can't find anywhere else than being able to play it on those storefronts. Sure, you could try to track down a physical copy of a lot of these games, but in many cases, something that would cost you digitally $6 on the PS3 goes for a couple $100 if you wanted to find a physical copy. And so the prospect of being able to access these titles once again on modern hardware with the PS4 and PS5 is a really cool and exciting thing to me. It's just kind of a letdown if the only way to do it is to pay for a part of this membership and there's no way to own a digital license of it. Also worth pointing out, though, while I'm sure some people don't care, the fact that the list does focus on just PS1, 2, 3, and PSP and just doesn't mention the Vita at all just hurts a little bit. Look, it doesn't have the largest catalog of amazing games, but there are some great titles on the Vita that are not really playable elsewhere, and it kind of sucks that that's not really part of the conversation right now. Ultimately, I am happy that we're going to be seeing some form of classical access be made available on the PS4 and PS5. I just really hope that it's a catalog that is actually robust and interesting, and even more so, I really hope it gives you the option to purchase and own these digitally, because while being able to pay for a subscription to have access to all of them is cool, if ultimately there's only 1 or 2 titles you really care about and want to grab, it'd be great if you had that option as well, and you didn't have to keep re-upping a subscription just to access those specific ones. The other thing I want to talk about a little bit with this service actually has nothing to do with the initial press release for it, but rather comments that Jim Ryan has made in interviews that were released alongside. And this has to do with one of the kind of key features of Xbox Game Pass that is not present on this new version of PlayStation Plus, which is same-day availability of first-party titles. While the goal of this new version of PS Plus is not necessarily to be a direct competitor to Game Pass, that is a comparison that a lot of people have been making, and for good reason. I mean, it is a service where you pay a monthly or yearly fee to have access to a catalog of games. One of the big differentiations, though, is that with Xbox, they are putting their own major first-party titles on it right away at launch. So when games like Forza Horizon 5 or Halo Infinite came out, those were available as part of Game Pass right away. You did not have to buy them separately. Whereas with this new version of PlayStation Plus, there's going to be a large catalog of games, and based on the list they have showed, they are going to put some first-party titles on there, but not at the same time they're being released for the first time. So for instance, when God of War Ragnarok comes out later this year, if you want to play it right at launch, you're going to have to buy it. It's not going to be something included as part of PlayStation Plus Extra. And so while talking about that subject, Jim Ryan made a number of comments that were really interesting and I think highlight not only their approach to this service, but really just what PlayStation's focus is right now as a company. First off, when it comes to why they're not including these titles, his specific comments are, it's not a road that we're going to go down with this new service. We feel if we were to do that with the games that we make at PlayStation Studios, the level of investment that we need to make in our studios would not be possible, and we think that the knock-on effect on the quality of the games that we make would not be something that gamers want. Basically, the idea is that by making these major first-party games available as part of a service right away, you hit the direct profitability of that title, and thus they're not necessarily going to invest as much into making that game as good as it can possibly be. And I completely understand this approach. I mean, this has been a very big talking point with Xbox about whether or not Game Pass is a long-term sustainable thing, and part of the reason why Microsoft is able to experiment and push it as hard as they have been is that they have access to Microsoft money, which Sony isn't necessarily able to take the same kind of major risks with. They're much more interested in really trying to preserve the current status quo of what has clearly been already working for them in terms of focusing on major first-party titles. But it's not this line about why they're not doing same-day games that I think is really interesting. The one that really stands out is Jim Ryan's focus on what he thinks is actually more important for PlayStation to focus on as a company instead of subscription services: live service games. That phenomenon of the live service game has, in a very large part, fueled the enormous growth in the gaming industry that we've seen over the last 10 years. I think that trend towards live services will continue, and if you look for a model in our category of entertainment which supports sustained engagement over a long period of time, live service games arguably fit that bill better than a subscription service. In other words, where Xbox is really focusing on Game Pass as being the full future of their platform and is really the thing they want to make the new kind of default that everyone is interested in, PlayStation is more interested in having a subscription option available for things like accessing a catalog of games, but really where the actual long-term money is at and what they want to develop and focus on is having more titles that are able to sustain a large audience over a long period of time, similar to Fortnite. And this lines up with decisions and things that PlayStation has done recently. In the whole kind of season of acquisitions that kicked off the start of this year, we found out that PlayStation is forming a partnership with Bungie, and a large part of why they reasoned that is that they wanted to have more back-end information and experience on hand for developing future live service games, and have even said that they have as many as 10 different live service titles currently in development. Now, I gotta be honest, me personally, I really like just simple, focused single-player experiences. And this is actually one of the reasons why I've enjoyed PlayStation as a platform, is because they make a lot of great AAA single-player focused games. Spider-Man, God of War, Horizon, and of course a number of third-party titles that are exclusive to the PlayStation platform, like Final Fantasy VII Remake, though that has made its way to PC as well. And so I just really hope that this emphasis on games as live service does not completely supplant and replace those single-player experiences. I totally get why it's something they want to focus on. It makes money, but I just don't want that to be the thing that completely takes over their ecosystem, because again, one of the reasons why I love PlayStation is those single-player titles. Going back to PlayStation Plus, overall, just going off of what we now know from the press release, what we're getting sounds fine. It's a consolidation of PlayStation Now and PlayStation Plus, which I think is a very good thing. I think for a while, a lot of people have not paid attention to PlayStation Now because its initial launch was just kind of rocky and no one really gave it a second mind. And so rebranding that as part of PlayStation Plus and making this tier service, I think is a really good move. What it means for those classic games they're getting added, I really want to know a lot more, and I think that's going to really impact my overall perception of the service. But hopefully it's going to become a cool way to access these titles, and not necessarily the only way to access them. Either way, the plan right now is to roll out the service starting in June in different territories over time, so we will be learning more pretty quickly about all of this to see what full shape it takes. I would say right now for myself, I'm cautiously optimistic, and hopefully it does not end up disappointing. Let me know what you guys think down below, though. Are you guys excited about these changes? Are you planning on subscribing to one of the higher tiered versions of the service? Since they are adding classical games to the library, what games do you want to see get added as soon as possible? Let me know down below. As always, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to let me know with a thumbs up, as well as subscribe if you haven't yet. If you didn't like the video for whatever reason, let me know with a thumbs down as well. Just good information for me to have, and I will see you guys later.